Welcome. Tonight's story is a quiet mystery, a field report from the edge of the map. Two university students vanished during a class trip to a remote island near Okinawa, an island only accessible by boat. There were no signs of a struggle, no gear left behind, no footprints. What follows is a slow, investigative journal, kept by a coastal rescue officer, pieced together from field logs, testimony, and disturbing anomalies. This is just one in a growing collection of strange disappearances. A series of reports that hint at something deeper and older than folklore. Set against the sound of gentle rain, this experience is designed to ease you into sleep and let your imagination wander. So close your eyes. Listen carefully. Because sometimes the missing don't want to be found. Title: Vanishing on Yonaguni, a missing 411 mystery. Field log number 1, incident overview. Date: November 9th, 2023. Location: Yonaguni Island, Yaeyama District, Okinawa Prefecture. Compiled by S. Iwasaki, Coastal Rescue Unit, Okinawa Command. This report pertains to the unsolved disappearance of two university students, Takumi Hoshino, 21, and Emi Kawamura, 22, during a supervised geological field trip to Yonaguni Island, Japan's westernmost inhabited landmass. The event occurred on October 21st, 2023. I was called in 72 hours later, after local search and rescue efforts produced nothing. What follows is a full log of observations, evidence, and inconsistencies, none of which, to this day, add up. Yonaguni is remote, accessible only by a single daily ferry from Ishigaki or infrequent charter flights. The students arrived as part of a marine archaeology course led by Professor Hirota from Kyushu University. The entire class, 18 students and 2 faculty, disembarked together. Local records confirm it. They checked into a traditional minshuku near Sonai village and began their scheduled survey work at the coastal site of the Yonaguni Monument. On the morning of October 21st, around 9:40 a.m., Takumi and Emi were last seen heading down a stone trail along the eastern bluff, instructed to map coastal formations for a class assignment. GPS logs show their phones transmitting until approximately 10:06 a.m. After that, nothing. No calls, no pings, no footprints, no clothing, no gear. The trail they walked leads to a sheer cliff face that opens into the ocean. The surf below is treacherous, but search divers, including the Japan Coast Guard, found no evidence of a fall, no torn fabric, no scuffs, no blood. The cliff wall had no fresh erosion. Drones found no alternate paths, and thermal scans showed no recent heat signatures inland. They vanished. Field log number 2, initial search and island constraints. October 22nd, day 1 of active search. Local police, Professor Hirota, and 6 volunteers combed the eastern bluff trail. The site is narrow, sandstone ledges, low shrub growth, and nowhere truly to hide. GPS confirmed that both phones went offline simultaneously at 10:06 a.m., approximately 40 meters from a known survey marker. The marker itself showed no disturbance. We questioned students who'd passed the same trail that morning. None reported seeing Takumi or Emi return. No voices, no cries for help. Conditions were clear. Light wind, waves below averaged 1.2 meters. Rough, but not fatal. If they fell, we would have seen the splash or retrieved something by now. A fisherman from Sonai reported a strange echo from the cliff area around the same hour. Felt like the air trembled, he said. Nothing more. October 23rd, ground and sea searches expanded to include inland jungle path, the underwater monument site, and the northwestern bay. Dogs brought in from Ishigaki. No scent trail, no gear. A dive team explored tide pools, caves, and submerged ledges. Nothing. Field log number 3, aerial and sensor analysis. October 24th, drone footage from the previous day reviewed at base. One drone captured an unusual atmospheric fluctuation, a shimmer or lensing effect on the coastal path near the cliff's edge. Timestamp, 10:05 a.m. We initially chalked it up to heat distortion, but when we slowed the footage frame by frame, the shimmer appears to ripple inward, not outward, as if drawing light into a fixed point. The footage was handed over to JAXA's remote sensing unit in Okinawa. No comment returned yet. A sensor placed near the cliff's base recorded a 1.2 milligauss magnetic spike at 10:06 a.m. This coincides with the last ping from both students' phones. October 25th. Residents of Sonai begin to express unease. A local grocer tells me, "You're not the first ones to search this island." I press for more. She says in 1992, a teenage boy vanished in the same area during a family visit. They blamed the sea, but the family swore he was on the trail, just a few steps ahead. Field log number 4, cultural layer and oral lore. October 26th, visited Yonaguni's community center. Archivist allowed access to hand-copied translations of old Ryukyuan legends. One fragment refers to Irahima no Tami, roughly, those who hear the island's name called back. Another story describes holes in time along the cliffs where the air can breathe wrong. Locals don't say it aloud, but a few mention shifting places on the island, spots where compasses fail and sound echoes back before it's spoken. One elder gestures toward the east bluff and mutters, "Don't walk where the air is still." It remembers. October 27th. I speak privately with Professor Hirota. He confesses that 3 months prior, while scouting for this trip, he lost 30 minutes on that same trail. Says his watch stopped, and when it ticked again, he was farther along than he remembered walking. He didn't mention it before. He thought it was fatigue or heat stroke, but it was a cool day. Field log number 5, the tide cave incident. October 28th, dive team revisits an isolated tide cave accessible only during low tide. At 4:11 p.m., 2 divers enter. At 4:19, their body cams glitch, both feeds cut out for 32 seconds. Audio is filled with layered static, faint overlapping whispers. When feed resumes, they're deeper than the cave should allow, nearly 60 meters inward. They do not recall how they got there. One diver, Akita, claims he saw a ripple of light, like a curtain underwater. He touched it, felt something pulling. He has since experienced vertigo and auditory hallucinations, muffled voices saying his name. Field log number 6, final notes before withdrawal. October 30th, no new findings. JAXA review returned inconclusive results. The light distortion in drone footage was not a known meteorological or electromagnetic event. Emi and Takumi's families arrived today. I stood with them on the bluff. It's hard to explain to a grieving parent that there is no trail, no footprints, no reason. November 14th, 2 weeks since the withdrawal, I receive a message from Yonaguni's mayor's office. A child playing near the northeastern beach found a waterproof notebook, torn pages half filled with moisture-blurred sketches. The notebook matches Emi Kawamura's field gear. Inside, coastal sketches that stop abruptly. One final drawing is nearly illegible. A rough outline of a face, eyes wide, mouth open. Below it, in rushed pencil, the words, I saw it in the water. It saw me too. The mayor's assistant says no one had access to that area recently. The tides are violent, and local youth are warned not to play near it. The notebook is sent to the mainland for further testing. November 18th. Another report. A farmer hiking above the inland stream near Kubura finds Takumi's hiking glove resting atop a perfectly flat stone, dry despite the recent rain. No tracks around it. No mud. Just the glove. Fingers curled as if gripped around something invisible. Locals begin whispering again. One elder tells a visiting SAR officer that the spirits of the island do not take. They return once they've been remembered. I'm not sure what happened on Yonaguni, but I no longer believe it was misadventure or tides. I believe something waited there, and whatever it was, it doesn't leave footprints either. Field log number 7, return to the island. December 3rd, I've returned to Yonaguni unofficially. I came alone. Couldn't stop thinking about Emi's notebook. The handwriting, the drawing, that phrase, it saw me too. I arranged a private charter from Ishigaki. The weather was clear, the ocean unusually calm. I hiked straight to the northeastern beach where the notebook was found. The stone outcrop there seems out of place, too angular for natural formation. There are faint striations along the side, like tool marks, and a sound, barely audible, almost like breath beneath the crashing surf. December 4th. I spent the night at the old Minshuku. The proprietor, Mrs. Wahara, remembered the students. She handed me a small photo Takumi had taken and printed during his stay, an image of a crescent-shaped rock partially buried in sand. She said she hadn't seen that rock since the day they vanished. I found the rock this morning. It had moved. It now rests at the edge of the cliff trail. No prints around it. It was dry. The moss beneath it still wet. Field log number 8. Final theory. December 6th. I believe there is a phenomenon on Yonaguni, something that affects time, orientation, perception. I'm no physicist, but this is beyond strange geology. It's systemic, predictable only by its unpredictability. I've documented a dozen small distortions in sound, light, and magnetic pull in the last 48 hours. What worries me is how precise they feel, as if whatever's causing them is watching. There are stories of islands that vanish, whole villages lost to fog, and I wonder, what if they didn't vanish? What if something called them sideways, to another version of this place, or one that remembers more than we do? I'm leaving the island tomorrow, but I don't think it's done with me. If this log reaches anyone else, do not go alone. Field log number 9. Their return. January 7th, I received a call from Yonaguni's municipal office this morning. 2 people matching the descriptions of Takumi Hoshino and Emi Kawamura were found walking into Sonai village just after dawn. They were confused, quiet, but unharmed. Their clothes were clean. No wear, no sun bleaching, no signs of weather damage. Their hair and nails showed no indication of time passage, no dehydration, no injuries. Medical exam confirms they are in perfect health. No memory of the past 2.5 months. When asked what happened, Emi simply said, "We were walking, then we weren't. The sky blinked, then we were here." Takumi said, "It felt like a blink, like turning around in a dream." They remembered no hunger, no sleep, no fear, only light and a deep, pervasive stillness. Locals who saw them described the two as walking calmly, like they never left. Some believe they returned because the island let them go. January 9th. I met with them privately. I showed them the glove, the notebook. They didn't remember writing the last entry. Emmy grew pale when she saw the sketch of the face. She said she didn't draw it. She doesn't remember ever seeing it. They've since returned to their families on the mainland. No further symptoms, no anomalies, no trace of where they went. But I believe the island remembers, and one day it may call again. March 14th. It's been 2 months since their return. I still revisit Yonaguni in my mind nearly every day. There are no official updates. The case is closed, filed as an unexplained absence with recovery. But I've been sent another envelope. No return address. Inside, a photograph printed on glossy paper. It shows the crescent-shaped rock again. Only this time, it is fully exposed. The tide looks wrong, too low for the time of year. Etched into the rock is a faint spiral pattern. I don't remember seeing that when I was there. I checked the tide logs. The photograph's timestamp corresponds to a day when that beach was entirely submerged. I tried calling Takumi. His number is disconnected. Emmy's parents said she's traveling. They didn't say where. And last night I dreamed of the tide cave, of the curtain of light. But this time it opened. I saw figures waiting. Not hostile, not human, just watching. If I go back, I don't think I'll return again. But something in me knows I will. Echoes on Fuji. A missing 411 mystery. Field log number 1. Veteran Search and Rescue Unit Journal. Date: October 17th, 2022. Location: Mount Fuji, Yamanashi Prefecture, Japan. Compiled by Kei Takamura, Senior Field Officer, retired. It's been almost 6 months since the case of Ryota Kano went cold. I keep this record not because I believe it will change anything, but because it still doesn't make sense. Even after 3 decades in search and rescue, this one, it keeps me up at night. Not because of what we found, but because of what we didn't. Ryota was 29th, solo hiker, well prepared, lived in Tokyo, worked remote, outdoors often. On April 19, 2022, he set out to climb Mount Fuji from the less-traveled Subashiri Trail. Spring ascent. Still snow above the 6th station, but manageable with proper gear, which he had. He texted his sister around 9:13 a.m., photo attached, smiling with the summit still veiled in mist behind him. That was the last anyone heard from him. Field log number 2, search timeline. April 21st. His sister reports him missing after no contact for 2 days. Initial SAR dispatch begins early the next morning. April 22nd. We start from the Subashiri trailhead. Conditions: mild wind, fog drifting in and out by late morning. We find Ryota's boot prints at the 5th station. Consistent pacing, no signs of slipping. His entry in the logbook is clear. Cloudy. Still, beautiful. Going up. Time stamped. 8:47 a.m. April 23rd. Helicopter sweep. Nothing. We scan tree lines, crevices, snowfields. At the 6.5 station, a partial track, right boot only, walking, then suddenly gone. No left print, no slide, drag, or stumble marks. Just stopped. Like he stepped out of the world. That night, one of our team members, Nakamoto, reports hearing a voice off-trail. Says it called his name, twice. He's shaken. Refuses to sleep in the tent. Says it sounded like Ryota. April 24th. Dog team is brought in. They lead us not further up, but sideways, through dense growth, off-mapped routes. 400 meters in, the dogs stop and circle. There's an old stone marker, covered in moss. Writing worn off. Could be Edo period. Around it, we find nothing but wind and silence. Field log number 3. Patterns and unsettling details. April 25th. A local guide named Junpei joins us, knows the trails intimately. When he hears about the moss-covered stone, he grows quiet. Says hikers used to avoid that area. Old stories, whispers of Yamabiko, echo spirits. Harmless, usually, until they call you by name. We keep searching. At 2:14 p.m., we find something. Ryota's phone wedged between 2 roots beneath a tree. It's off. Battery dead. No water damage. We hand it over to police. When checked later, last photo time-stamped 9:31 a.m., April 19th. He's facing the forest. No smile. Eyes wide. Blurry figure in the background. Unclear. No tracks near the spot. Field log number 4. Widening the search. April 26th. Weather worsening. Fog rolls in thick and fast, sometimes reducing visibility to less than 10 meters. We split into 3 teams. No new signs of Ryota. Junpei mentions we're nearing a stretch of trail that turns sound against itself. Says it's not uncommon for voices to echo wrong, like someone is calling from behind you, even if you're walking alone. April 27th. Drones deployed. One feeds back strange interference, static bursts and distorted visual feed when flying over the mossy stone area. Battery drained rapidly. Recovered drone showed a single corrupted frame with what appears to be a figure. Tall, indistinct, mid-stride, but casting no shadow. That night, Nakamoto leaves early. He says he dreamed of Ryota standing at the foot of his sleeping bag. Silent, just staring. Field log number 5. Interviews and theories. April 28th. We speak with a retired mountain caretaker, Ishii-san. Says he's heard of people going missing here for over 40 years. Sometimes a coat is found hanging in a tree. Sometimes a footprint ends at the edge of a drop. But there's no body below. He tells us, the mountain keeps what it chooses. April 30th. Police end the official search, but a few of us keep looking, not out of duty. Curiosity, maybe guilt. None of us say it aloud, but we all feel the same thing. We're not supposed to be there anymore. The trail grows colder, but the forest doesn't feel empty. Field log number 6, residual evidence and missing time. May 2. I return to the site with Junpei. The area near the mossy stone marker feels different. It's not just the silence. It's the way it absorbs sound. You can clap your hands and hear it bounce back from the wrong direction. We take atmospheric readings. Barometric pressure drops sharply within a 30-meter radius. Magnetic compass begins spinning slowly, counterclockwise. Then it stops, perfectly still. May 3, we find a new anomaly. 3 stones arranged in a triangle at the base of a cedar tree. Inside the triangle, Ryota's beanie, bone dry. No sign it had been buried or exposed to weather. That section of trail hasn't seen sun in weeks. We take the beanie in, photograph everything. The forestry ranger who sees the images doesn't want to speak at first. Then he tells me of a climber in 1996 who went missing under similar circumstances, also near a cedar grove. He was found 3 years later, 10 kilometers away. His boots were missing. His coat was zipped all the way up, inside out. Field log number 7, psychological effects on team. May 5th, we rotate out 2 volunteers. One was reporting severe vertigo in the woods. The other, Junpei, won't return. He tells me quietly that something followed him back to his cabin. Says he hears Ryota's voice in the night. Whispers outside the shoji screen. May 6th. I start experiencing minor disorientation. Time feels fragmented. We descend to 4th station for rest. I check my watch. It's 6 minutes behind my phone. I reset it. 5 hours later, it's 11 minutes behind. Others report their clocks doing the same. Something is distorting the environment up there. Field log number 8. Closure or warning. May 10th. We conclude the final unofficial sweep. Ryota is still missing, but we are not, and something about that feels wrong. On the way back down, we pass the mossy stone. There's a line carved faintly into the side that wasn't there before. It reads, "You heard me." No one admits to carving it. We don't speak on the descent. At base camp, the fog lifts, and for the first time in days, we see the summit. It glows gold in the distance. But I can't shake the feeling that something else is watching. Field log number 9, the disappearing tree line. May 12. 2 SAR members from the neighboring Shizuoka team arrive after hearing rumors about our operation. One of them, Hana, tells me she's seen this before. A hiker vanishing mid-route, with no sign of trauma, no attack, no natural cause. She mentions a case from 2004, also on Fuji, where the trees near 7th station shifted position on different satellite passes. Like the forest moved, she said. I thought it sounded ridiculous, until we checked the latest topographic images. 2 cedar trees we used as trail markers are simply gone. Not fallen. Gone. May 13th. Nakamoto leaves a note before disappearing from the base lodge. His tent was packed, no signs of a struggle. His message reads, "I see him every time I close my eyes. He wants us to understand." Police initiate another search. For him. Field log number 10. Audio anomalies. May 15th. Reviewing archived drone audio from April 27th. Found a sequence buried beneath the wind. 3 notes whistled in descending pitch, repeated twice. When played back at half speed, they sound almost human. Some on the team swear it's a word. Kano. May 16th. Audio sent to Tokyo Institute of Acoustics. Response is inconclusive. The signature does not match known fauna or environmental phenomena. The researcher adds a final note. It sounds deliberate. Field log number 11, the hidden shrine. May 20. A forestry student from Yamanashi contacts us after seeing online chatter. Says his great-uncle spoke of an invisible path above the Subashiri route. He guides us to a half-buried torii gate covered in ivy and nearly dissolved in rot. Beyond it, ruins of a tiny shrine, not listed on any map. Inside, a broken mirror. A folded note beneath it reads, "Come alone, or not at all." It's written in modern script, fresh ink. We leave an offering of rice and sake. The wind dies entirely. Field log number 12, final entry. May 25th. I'm closing this record. Not because we have answers, but because we've stopped asking the right questions. Ryota is still missing. Nakamoto is still missing. And now I wonder if the mountain wants it that way. Sometimes at night I hear my own name echo from places it shouldn't. Not loud, just enough to notice, just enough to wonder. To whoever finds this, if you're thinking of hiking Mount Fuji off-season, off-route, don't. Not alone. Not anymore. Supplemental entry, addendum by investigator M. Sakai, July 3rd, received access to Takamura's field logs. First reaction, disbelief. But the pattern is there. I reviewed other missing persons cases across the Southern Alps and Fuji Five Lakes region. 12 share eerily similar features: abrupt end of tracks, lost time, and voice phenomena. One case, 2017, involved a missing college student whose final voicemail was 45 seconds of static, followed by a whispered, "Not yet." July 5th, visited the mossy stone marker with 2 colleagues. None of us spoke on the hike back down. One later described the sensation as being remembered by something that forgot everything else. July 7th, my comp, ass, back in my apartment in Shinjuku, spun in a slow circle last night. I no longer believe this is about one missing man. It's a pattern, a place, ... a presence. And it's still there. Field log number 13, the Echo Ridge Expedition. August 2nd, funding approved for a low-profile academic expedition. We return with a team of 3 university researchers, including a geophysicist and linguist. We bring additional sensors and audio equipment. The plan is to camp 3 nights near the mossy stone marker, now dubbed Echo Ridge by the team. August 3rd, sensors detect slight pressure fluctuations, beyond what should occur at this altitude. No seismic activity registered elsewhere in the region. Audio devices pick up distant, rhythmic pulses, 7 seconds apart. When filtered through a low-pass EQ, they resemble faint syllables. August 4th. On the second night, one of the researchers, Suda, wakes the group around 2:30 a.m., claims he heard someone whispering from the tree line. Recorders pick up nothing, just wind. But later analysis reveals a low vocalization layered under the gusts. When amplified, it matches the pattern recorded in April. August 5th. A mirror, similar to the one found in the hidden shrine, is discovered buried near camp, wrapped in cloth. Suda believes it was a protective charm, buried upside down. The team places it upright on a small mound near camp. That night, the wind stops entirely and does not return until dawn. Field log number 14. Distortion events and the shifting path. August 6th, we hike a mapped section near the 6.5 station. At 3:14 p.m., our GPS units drop signal. Physical compasses all point west, opposite of true north. Overhead, clouds spiral unnaturally tight, forming a slow-moving ring above the ridge. We backtrack, but the trail is subtly wrong. A fork that didn't exist before is now plainly visible. We mark it and return to camp. When we attempt to locate the same fork the next morning, it's gone. August 7th, Suda refuses to hike out with us, says something changed him, that he has heard the rhythm now. We leave behind a flare kit, water, and radio. 2 days later, he is airlifted by local rangers found wandering 5 kilometers from Echo Ridge, clothing intact, but barefoot. Field log number 15, the forest that listens. August 12th. Interviews with shrine historians suggest that certain Fuji forest zones were avoided not out of superstition, but precision. Pilgrims were instructed to pass through specific routes to prevent spiritual misalignment. One scroll refers to the Listening Grove, an area where prayers were not spoken aloud. Takamura cross-references early SAR maps and confirms that Echo Ridge borders the zone marked centuries ago as Kami no Soko, roughly translated, where gods sleep standing. August 13th. An anonymous box arrives at the Yamanashi SAR post containing a stone tablet etched with Ryota's name. It is not in a modern font. Experts believe the carving style predates the Meiji era. No fingerprints found. Field log number 16. The return to Subashiri. August 20th. We return to the original Subashiri trailhead. A new memorial has appeared, unmarked yet fresh. 3 candles burn beside it. Wind is absent again. We decide to camp nearby. That night, one of our infrared cameras captures a tall figure standing between trees, visible for 4 frames before vanishing. Upon reviewing footage, we notice a shadow that bends in the wrong direction, toward the light source, not away. A final note is added to the log by Takamura. Ryota may never return, but something always does.
Lanterns beyond the pass.
The wind carried dust and memory as it whispered down from the high pass. The road was narrow here, cut into the mountainside like an old scar. Far below, clouds curled around the trees, and above, the sky faded into dusk. A single figure moved along the path, a swordsman, worn but upright, his silhouette long in the amber light.
His name was Hiroto. He had walked 1,000 roads and forgotten none of them. Where once he had walked for fame, now he walked for silence. His sword, wrapped and worn, hung by his side like an old memory. The mountain pass opened onto a narrow plateau. There, nestled between pine and fog, stood a small village of flickering lanterns and slow-burning incense. The rooftops sloped like folded wings, and prayer flags fluttered gently between wooden beams. He had not meant to stop, but something about the light, the way it danced like flame and memory, held him in place. A child's laughter echoed faintly from a courtyard. A bell rang twice, and from the shadows of the lanterns stepped an old woman, holding a tray of tea. "Even warriors need warmth," she said. Her voice was like the mountain, aged, unmoving, true. Hiroto bowed. "Then I'll accept your kindness." He sat by her fire as the sky turned violet, listening to the quiet thrum of the village. She said little, but as she poured the tea, her hand trembled just enough to shake the light. "There are old spirits here," she said, "ones that remember names long buried." Hiroto looked into the steam rising from his cup. "Then perhaps I'll leave my name behind when I go." She gave no answer, only smiled. That night, as lanterns glowed against the mist, Hiroto lay awake beneath the sloped roof of the guest house. Outside, the wind carried whispers, not quite words. Dreams rose slowly. A bridge of stone, a child with no face, a bell that would not stop ringing.
When he woke, the village was already moving, softly, like breath.
He stepped into the courtyard, sword still sheathed, eyes scanning the horizon. Something had changed in the air. The mist was thicker, more deliberate, curling between stones and over the thatched rooftops like fingers. A small boy stood by the shrine gate, pale, unmoving. His clothes were old, too old, and his face, though still, flickered slightly as if seen through water. Hiroto approached slowly. "Are you lost?" The boy looked up, his eyes dark and deep. "They forget," he said, "but you remember." Before Hiroto could respond, the boy turned and passed through the torii gate. The bell above it rang once, though no wind stirred. The villagers, when asked, claimed no knowledge of the child. One simply bowed her head. "Not all who walk here are of this world," she whispered.
That evening, Hiroto stood before the shrine. Offerings lay untouched, the incense long since burned out, and in the gathering dark, lanterns blinked to life, one by one, without a single hand to light them.
As he stared into the soft flicker of the shrine's lanterns, the air grew colder. A shape stirred behind the altar, faint, shifting, cloaked in shadows. Hiroto did not draw his sword, not yet. A woman stepped forward, or rather drifted. Her feet did not touch the earth. Her robes moved like water, and her hair flowed in silence. Her eyes held centuries. "You carry sorrow," she said, "but it is not yours alone."
Hiroto bowed his head. "I've tried to lay it down, but it follows." The spirit raised a translucent hand and touched the air before him. A memory bloomed in the space between them. A battlefield of fire, a fallen brother, a sword dropped into the mud.
"It was not your fault," she whispered, "but it is your burden."
Hiroto closed his eyes. The scent of blood and ash filled his lungs for a moment, and then it passed. "Why show me this now?"
"Because dawn nears," the spirit said, her voice thinning with the wind. "And before you can cross the pass, you must light your own lantern."
Then she was gone. Only the whisper of silk remained.
Hiroto stood alone. In his hand, though he did not remember reaching for it, was a single unlit lantern. He turned the lantern slowly in his hands. Its frame was light, delicate, bamboo and rice paper, but it felt heavier than any sword he had ever lifted. The wick was dry, waiting. He walked through the sleeping village, past shuttered homes, past the well, past the shrine, up the slope that curved behind the torii gate and toward the high ridge where the mist began to thin. Each step felt familiar, though he had never walked it before. It reminded him of all the places he had wandered, all the dojos he had visited, all the duels fought in courtyards lit by dawn. He thought of the teachings of his first master, how the blade was not for glory but for clarity. Of the monk he had met beneath a cedar tree who said, "A sword that draws blood stains the hand. A sword that defends clears the soul." He thought of the man he had been, proud, restless, quick to strike, and of the man he had become, quieter, slower, listening more than speaking. He no longer fought to win. He fought when he had to protect. And still, the burden of all those battles weighed him down. Every life he had ended, every cry, silenced by steel, lingered just beyond the edge of memory. When he reached the ridge, he paused. The world was wide before him. The mountains stretched like waves, and the sky had begun to brighten with the first colour of morning. He knelt, placing the lantern on the stone. He took the flint from his sash, struck it, and touched spark to wick. Nothing.
He tried again. Still no flame. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "What must I give?" he whispered.
The wind answered, not with words, but with memory. And Hiroto saw
his brother's face, smiling before the fall.
The tears of a girl in a mountain village where bandits never returned. The laughter of children who never knew his name, only that he stood between them and harm.
The silence of an empty temple where he once left an offering and a vow.
He opened his eyes,
The lantern flickered,
then bloomed to life. Its glow was not fire, it was memory. It was peace. He bowed his head. And as the light grew, the mist around him thinned. The pass ahead was clear.
He stood, the lantern in one hand, his sword still at his side.
Ready. From the clearing, Mist stepped a figure, broad, deliberate, and wrapped in the armor of a forgotten age. His face was pale but firm, eyes like still water, and across his chest hung the emblem of a clan long lost to war. Hiroto's breath caught. The man who stood before him was Daizan, his greatest rival, a warrior once fierce and proud, fallen by Hiroto's blade many seasons past in a duel that had echoed across provinces. Daizan drew his sword in silence. The steel shimmered not with light, but with memory. Hiroto did not move. "You were buried with honor," he said. "What brings you here?" Daizan's voice was calm, without malice. "I trained in the realm beyond. Not for vengeance, for this. To finish what we began." "I do not wish to fight you," Hiroto said, lowering his stance. "And yet the path calls for it," Daizan replied. "A lantern lit without truth burns out." Their swords met beneath the pale dawn. The clash echoed down the pass like thunder through clouds. Mist coiled around them as they moved, fluid, practiced, deliberate. Hiroto's grip was steady, but his heart wavered, not from fear, he had long made peace with death, but from the sorrow of raising steel against one who once shared his code. Daizan had been more than a rival. He had been the mirror that tested Hiroto's resolve when youth burned too, brightly. Daizan struck first with the force of a falling mountain. Hiroto met him with the grace of flowing water. Their blades sang, each movement etched into air like ink upon rice paper. Steel rang again. Sparks danced in the rising mist. The world around them faded. There was only footfall, breath, memory. Daizan pressed forward with fury honed over lifetimes, but Hiroto, older, tempered, transformed, gave no ground. He moved with restraint, parried with precision, and countered not to harm, but to hold.
Their blades locked, faces inches apart.
"You have changed," Daizan said through clenched teeth.
"As have you," Hiroto whispered. "This is not anger. This is release.
With one final step, Hiroto shifted his stance, low, circular, and turned Daizan's strength against him. The rival's blade flew free. Hiroto's own rested, silent and sure, at Daizan's throat.
But Hiroto did not strike.
He lowered his blade and stepped back.
The mist held still, as if watching. Daizan straightened. He looked at his empty hands, then at Hiroto.
And he smiled.
With a final breath, Hiroto disarmed him. His blade rested at Daizan's throat. But Daizan smiled.
The mist around him began to rise. "Fairly done," Daizan said. "Now I may rest."
He sheathed a phantom sword and bowed deeply. "You carried my spirit farther than I could walk alone," he said. "I offer you my forgiveness and my respect."
Then, like lantern smoke, he faded. Hiroto stood in stillness.
Above, the morning sky blossomed in hues of rose and silver.
The path beyond the pass was open. He stepped onto the ancient Nakasendo trail, where earth met stone and memory clung to cedar. The path wound southward, tracing the spine of the mountains between Edo and Kyoto. A road built for travel for the weight of sandals and seasons. The trail was lined with cedar groves, shrines tucked between bends in the road, and the occasional Jizo statue wrapped in a child's red bib. Hiroto bowed at each, touching the handle of his sword to his brow. Each one seemed to remember him. Or perhaps it was he who remembered them. In one village, a boy challenged him with a stick, his stance earnest and wild. Hiroto showed him how to lower his center of gravity. A strong stance begins with stillness, he said. The boy's eyes lit up. He passed a temple where, years ago, he had crossed blades with a ronin in the moonlight. Back then they had fought for honor, each testing the other in silence. Now the temple was empty, the sakura trees blooming in quiet tribute. He left a coin at the altar and whispered, "You fought with grace." In a tea house above Kiso Valley, he sat where once he had argued with a brash young swordsman, eager for fame. They had fought the next morning in the snow, blades ringing like bells. Hiroto had won, but it was the youth's ambition that haunted him more than the steel. He lit a stick of incense for the boy's spirit, wherever it wandered. In a pass near Narai, he found the mark he had carved into a tree, just a scratch, almost lost to bark and time. It had been a vow never to draw again in anger. He touched it, and the oath warmed in his chest. The journey southward became more than passage. It became pilgrimage, a trail of redemption stitched between memory and earth. At night, he dreamed not of battle, but of rivers, of laughter, of the sound his sandals made on weathered stone. In Sumago, he watched two men argue over a boundary stone and calmed them with a tale of a borderless path. In Magome, a young woman gave him plum wine, saying her grandfather once spoke of a quiet swordsman who protected their village. Hiroto only bowed.
He left no signature, only moments.
The journey southward became more than passage. It became shedding. Layer by layer he left behind the man who had once lived by the blade. His sword, though still at his hip, felt less like a weapon and more like a memory of who he had been. He followed the scent of plum blossoms into Kyoto, a city older than story, filled with lantern light and echoes of drums. Temples shimmered in gold leaf, children chased paper kites above koi ponds. But even there, among tiled rooftops and cherry branches, Hiroto walked quietly. A man at peace, a lantern already lit. On the edge of Kyoto's eastern hills, he found a crumbling structure, half swallowed by moss and time. A wooden dojo, its pillars bowed, its roof sagging, but its bones still true. Hiroto stepped inside. Dust bloomed beneath his feet.
He recognized the layout. He had trained here once, long ago when his hands were still learning the rhythm of the blade, when he believed mastery was a destination, not a path.
He spent 3 days clearing debris. On the 4th, he spoke with local carpenters who remembered his name in whispered reverence. They joined him, not out of obligation, but honor. Beams were restored. rice paper screens mended, bamboo polished to a shine. In the corner, he placed a rack for wooden swords. Along the far wall, targets for archery. And at the center, an open space for silence, for study, for the dance of breath and balance. Children arrived first, wide-eyed, uncertain, then their parents, then traveling monks and archers and artisans drawn not by fame, but by the stillness that lived there. The dojo became a place of learning, not just of swordplay, but of discipline, of poetry, of quiet reflection. Hiroto taught few techniques. He taught listening, posture, stillness before motion. And when he walked its polished floor at dusk, lanterns glowing softly along the beams, he knew that though his road had ended, his journey would ripple forward, through each lesson, each breath, each generation that followed.
Whispers in the mist.
Ren woke to the pale light of early dawn. The mist outside had thickened again, curling against the shoji screens. His sleep had been deep and dreamless, though something within him stirred, like the feeling of having forgotten a dream just out of reach. Mornings like this always reminded him of the quiet countryside he had grown up in, where the mountains whispered and the rivers hummed lullabies through the stone.
He had been travelling for months now, Zrania moving from place to place with no true destination, driven less by purpose and more by an ache he couldn't name. Loss had followed him like a shadow, subtle, constant, and familiar. The journey wasn't about escape, it was about remembering, about stitching together the pieces that had frayed over time. And something in the stillness of this place, this morning, felt like a thread, pulling him gently toward wholeness.
He rose quietly and dressed, the floorboards creaking softly beneath him. Outside, the village was still wrapped in silence. He wandered down the path again, retracing steps from the previous day. The old woman sweeping was gone. The dyed cloth from the line now fluttered dry in the still air. He passed a small tea house, peering inside. A man sat cross-legged behind a low table, eyes closed. As if sensing Ren, he opened them slowly and smiled. "You're walking with the mist," the man said.
Ren nodded. "I'm looking for something."
The man gestured toward the forest. "Then walk deeper. What waits will not come unless invited." Ren thanked him and followed a narrow trail behind the village. The forest closed in gently, pine and cedar weaving a quiet canopy overhead. Ferns lined the path like green lace, and with every step the air grew heavier with dew and hush. He passed an old Torii gate, half hidden in ivy. Moss-covered stone lanterns dotted the way like silent guardians. He paused before each one, drawn by the small flickering lights inside. They weren't candles. They seemed to glow from within the stone itself. The whispers returned, soft, like a distant memory. They no longer startled him. They felt familiar, echoes of himself, footsteps through forgotten places. Further in, the trees opened slightly, revealing a quiet grove of plum trees in bloom. Their pale blossoms glowed in the dim light, and petals drifted like snow. A gentle breeze stirred the branches, releasing a sweet scent that lingered in the air like perfume. He stood beneath one tree, its limbs bowed with blossoms, and reached out to touch the trunk. It pulsed with warmth, not heat, just presence, like the steady rhythm of a heart. As his fingers rested on the bark, he noticed a cluster of tiny paper talismans tied to the branches, faded and weather-worn, some nearly illegible. They fluttered slightly, whispering secrets in the breeze. He recognized the shape of one, a folded crane yellowed by time. It reminded him of something he'd once made with his mother, long ago, folded and refolded, until it took flight from memory. He picked up a fallen blossom and held it to his chest, closing his eyes. The petals were soft and cool against his skin. The grove was quiet, but it felt full of time, of stories, of everything he'd forgotten, and everything waiting to be remembered. He sat down beneath the tree for a while, letting the silence stretch. Insects buzzed softly in the distance, birds stirred on high branches, and time seemed to slow around him. He took off his bag, laid it beside him, and breathed deeply. The air was cool and rich with cedar and plum. Out of the silence, a figure emerged from the trees, an old man with a walking stick carved from driftwood, a tiny bell tied near the top. The bell chimed with each step. The man paused across from Ren and gave a slow nod. "You've come far," the man said, "and left much behind." Ren nodded. "I think I'm still finding out what that means." The man smiled and tapped his staff lightly. "Sometimes the path becomes clear only when we stop looking." Then, just as silently, he turned and vanished between the trees. For a while, Ren stayed in the grove. He drank water from a nearby stream. He watched bees move from blossom to blossom. He closed his eyes and listened to the wind rustle through the branches, whispering stories older than memory. A soft rustle caught his attention. He turned to find a young girl kneeling beside a patch of moss, gently pressing something into the earth. She looked up at him without fear. "It's a prayer stone," she said, "for people we miss." Ren approached slowly. "Do you place them often?" The girl nodded. "Every day. Some people don't even know they're being remembered, but we do it anyway." She offered him a small, smooth stone, already warm from her hand. "You can place one too."
He knelt beside her and pressed the stone into the moss. No name, no word, just memory. The act felt whole. When he opened his eyes again, the light had changed. He stood. He reached a glade. At its center, a mirror pool, just as the map had promised. Still, dark, perfect. Around it stood ancient stone lanterns and a bridge arched like a gentle question. He stepped to the edge and saw his reflection, but not just him now, him as a boy running in summer rain, him watching snow fall from a hospital window, him standing by a gravestone, head bowed. Then the images changed. He saw the village, the inn, the mirror itself, and then a door. With quiet breath, he stepped onto the bridge. With each step, the world dimmed, like drifting into sleep. When he reached the middle, the surface of the water shimmered, and a soft voice whispered his name. He kneeled, touched the water. The world dissolved. He stood in the hallway of a childhood home, long since gone. The light was warm, the air filled with the scent of miso soup and wood smoke. Laughter rang from the other room.
A faded pair of slippers rested near the threshold, right where his mother used to leave them. The hallway was lined with framed photos, some slightly askew, each capturing a fragment of his family's life. His father's stern smile, his younger brother balancing on a bicycle, his mother mid-laugh during New Year's.
He stepped into the kitchen and ran his hand across the smooth wooden table. He remembered how they used to sit there every morning, his mother reading the paper aloud, his father sipping tea quietly, the clatter of chopsticks against porcelain bowls. He could almost taste the miso soup, feel the warmth of rice fresh from the cooker. A wind chime outside tapped gently against the eaves, its familiar song calling him deeper into memory.
He turned and saw his childhood bedroom, still filled with old books and faded posters of constellations. The bunk bed where he and his brother had whispered stories long after lights out still stood, the ladder worn where small feet had climbed it 1,000 times. On the desk was a notebook, still open to a drawing he'd started and never finished. A sketch of the village, maybe, or something like it. He stood in the room for a long time, letting the quiet embrace him, not with sadness, but with gratitude. The house didn't ask anything of him, it simply let him remember. He walked forward. Memories met him at every corner, a festival night, the birth of a sibling, an argument never resolved. Each scene faded as he passed, like lanterns extinguishing one by one.
Then silence and light.
He was standing in the shrine. The morning sun broke through the trees. In his hand, the strip of parchment. The ink was gone. Blank. He smiled. He returned to the village. It seemed older now, like it had exhaled. The inn was still there, but the bell no longer rang when he opened the door. Dust danced in sunbeams. As he stepped outside again, a familiar face emerged from a nearby doorway. It was the old woman who had once swept the porch. She no longer held a broom, only a shallow smile, soft but knowing. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked, her voice as gentle as falling ash.
Ren paused. Not exactly, but I think I found what I needed. She nodded and gestured to the sky. The mist is lifting. When the mountain lets you go, it's because it knows you're ready.
Ren bowed, and for a moment they stood in stillness together, listening to the rustle of leaves and distant chime of a bell that rang not from the inn, but from somewhere deeper within. He found the guest book, signed.
He walked the main road once more. The villagers nodded, eyes kind.
He bowed, then turned and left. The mist parted for him as he stepped back onto the mountain path. Below, the world waited. Nothing had changed, yet everything had. He paused at the crest of the hill and looked back one last time. The village, half veiled in mist, shimmered as if it belonged to another world. He felt no need to return what it had offered. It had given freely. He breathed in the cool air, filling his lungs with clarity. There would be other villages, other quiet paths. But now he would walk them differently. Not to forget, not to escape, but to live more gently.
In his mind, he saw the girl with her prayer stones, the man with the bell staff, the woman at the porch, all etched into him like verses of a poem.
And just before he descended, a thought settled in his heart like morning dew. He was no longer walking toward answers. he was walking with them.
The whispers were gone.
But in his chest, a quiet peace. He had come searching. He had found himself.